Okay, Facebook, this is take 2 because I did the first video only a few moments ago on the surface and apparently it kept freezing. So we're going to do it again. So now I've got the books all down here. So these are some books that I have. You can see the gap in the shelves behind me on Ceremonial Magick. Stems from a discussion, and I'm just picking them up from the floor. I had on Thursday night, excuse me, in relation to someone wanting to learn a little bit more about ceremonial magic and what books I would recommend for a beginner. This is a rabbit hole depending on what angle you want to go down and how deep you want to go down that rabbit hole. As far as I'm aware of the Golden Dawn. There's a Guardian Order. I don't know its correct title, the Order of the Guardians. Was that a movie? I don't know. And I'm quite sure there are other lodges and offshoots that also do ceremonial magic, high magic, along with the Golden Dawn. But it's the Golden Dawn who's probably more popular these days. So we'll start off with some of the classics and then move on to some of the other more recent books. Golden Dawn, and again, these are just books that I was introduced to and that in my studies I've sort of picked up and continued with them. First off, you can't do Golden Dawn, Ceremonial Magic, without talking about Israel Regardie. Now, he was the secretary somewhere, I don't know off the top of my head whether he had a connection with Crowley, that's Aleister Crowley. Somewhere along the line he was the secretary and he ended up with the papers of the Golden Dawn, I think. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, his first book is the Blue Book of the Golden Dawn. There's also a bigger yellow version of this book. It's got allegedly all the rituals. Now, I don't know up to what level. I said this is just off the top of my head. I haven't done any prepping for it because they had all the different degrees within the Golden Dawn. I think there's about 10 of them. So there's the big blue book that talks about, it's got the philosophies, it's got rituals, how to make your wands, etc. Set up your lodge, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de. That is all in this book. So that's probably book number 1 of the classics. He has also got a number of other books under his belt, starting off with the Middle Pillar, the Tree of Life, Study of Magic, and also a Garden of Pomegranates growing on the Tree of Life. So if you're going to be studying ceremonial magic, you're going to find out about the Tree of Life, which, just using David Rankine's book, is this glyph here. And it is used a lot within ceremonial magic, probably how it was described to me, very much like a filing cabinet, and you can view it as such. So we've got the 3 pillars there, and Israel's book in relation to the middle pillar is the centre one here, which sort of corresponds to the Eastern philosophy of or yogic teachings of the chakras. Similar sort of connection, yet different at the same time. So that's Israel Regardie's collection. I did have some other books, can't find them. If you want to be like a traditionalist or interested in the history of the Golden Dawn, well then S.L. McGregor Mathers, the Qabalah Unveiled is probably another classic to read. It's very old school because it was written last century or the century before that. Hard going, but that's for your classics. Also a lot of background stuff as well. In relation still to with the Golden Dawn, Israel Regardie, just before he passed, as I understand it, handed over the papers or the information to Chic, and I think it's Cheerio, and Sandra Cheerio, and they've gone on and published books and decks, I think, in their own rights. In particular, the Essential Guide to the Golden Dawn, the Essential Golden Dawn Introduction to High Magic is one of theirs. That actually includes background with photos of some of the founding people on Western esoteric teachings. So we've got Levi Velasquez, then we've got Anna Kingsford and Wynne Westcott down the bottom, back in the 18th, 19th century of Western esoteric teachings before it went off through the Theosophical Society, and the Golden Dawn sort of branched off from there. But then they talk about all the degrees, rites, setting up your lodges, the badges, the philosophies, etc. in their book. Then in the late 90s they published a slightly controversial title called Self-Initiation into the Golden Dawn. This is supposed to be a complete guide of the outer court papers, if you want to use it there, or the first degree papers of teachings within the Golden Dawn. So it is quite extensive. You've got lectures on astrology, tarot, as well as all the godheads, ritual orders, etc., rites, how it is taught within the Golden Dawn. Another classic, and the books are just falling on the floor, that I was introduced to at this stage was Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice. And this one does also include a lot of the Golden Dawn rituals, and was probably one of the first books that I was introduced to when it came to, they're not mantras or mudras, but it was like the hand gestures and the body gestures when we are doing our various rituals. Another book that I would call a classic, even though it's not strictly high magic, is Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon. I do recommend this to witches, magicians alike, any magical practitioner, though it is a little bit hard going due to it being a translation from the, I think he was Austrian, and also the era that he was writing in, very dry. But if you can get past that and actually understand what he was talking about, there's a lot of invaluable information in here. And also, as some of the initiation rites, it's all about suffering to learn. Now, modern interpretations. Again, those books, everything seems to have the same material, I won't say regurgitated, but explained in different ways, depending on the audience. So I don't have a lot of very modern books. Mine are still a number of years old, because I said it's largely the same information repeated. However, if you are someone coming through probably now without that classical background and that training, these authors probably more appeal to you a little bit more because they're not as old-fashioned as the ones that I've just mentioned. So I don't know in date order. The Qabalah, we'll look at the Qabalah first. We've got the Magical Primer by John Bonner. I like this book. He does sort of have a slant in relation to Crowley's work. That's fine. And another one in particular, just focusing on the Magical Qabalah, is David Rankine's Climbing the Tree of Life. And both these books sort of really give you an in-depth understanding in relation to the Qabalah. David breaks it down to the colour scales. He talks about the human soul in relation to the tree. He talks about the serpent. So you've got the tree before the fall and after the fall, if you want to look at that from a Christian perspective. He talks about minerals and crystals and colours and whole kit and caboodle. So it's actually a really good workbook. My first modern book, so to speak, was Modern Magic, 11 Lessons in High Magical Aids by Donald Michael Kraig. I still recommend this book. I think originally it was published under iMagic and was a lot thinner volume than this one. But again, this goes through, I've just opened up to, this is the Supreme Invoking of the Pentagram. It's got the hexagram right, it's got the pentagram right, it's got the archangels, it talks about the tree, he talks about the 3 veils, he gives the gestures in it when you're doing the ritual, talks about how to make your own robe, and there's 11 lessons. So I do still highly recommend Modern Magic. Next book is an Australian author by Names and Images, Bringing the Golden Dawn to Life by Peregrine. Wildoak may not be all that known outside of Australia or its English publishing house of Skylight Press, but again, very thick, detailed book, bringing sort of like more traditional teachings up to the 21st century so we can understand what Golden Dawn and Israel Regardie was talking about. And last but not least, another favourite, another recommended book that doesn't even make sense, is High Magic by Damien Eccles. And the reason I like this is because he's only just sticking to basically the expansion ritual of the pentagram in the middle pillar, but he also interweaves in it as to how magic was utilized by him in order to, keep him alive when he was in prison, and how it sort of saved his life, and he sort of incorporated mind, body and soul. So and he actually includes a few exercises in here that I haven't come across in other books too, because he also spent his time while he was on death row investigating and studying other magical and spiritual traditions. So you've got all of that sort of influence in this book. So if you're after just 2 books to get yourself started onto learning a little bit more about ceremonial or high magic, as far as I'm aware, they are 2 titles for the same thing, I would recommend Damien Eccles' book, and I also would recommend Modern Magic still. I think this one came out in the late or mid-90s. I still recommend it today. Then if you want to sort of explore the Tree of Life, then I would probably go more into David Rankine and John Bonner. But as I said earlier, there's so many different interpretations depending on whether you are a reader, whether you like the history, and where your mindset is. Like with all magical traditions, I guess it comes down to actually reading and then practicing. And it's only through practice that you begin to understand it better. I also, as I mentioned on Thursday night, throw the spanner into the works because I'm very much connected to the Southern Hemisphere, and I do things in relation to the Southern Hemisphere which do seem to upset some of the lodges which are very Northern Hemispheric orientated. But that's life, I guess, being in the different hemisphere. Anyway, so those are just a few books. I'll put a list of the top titles that I've talked about in the comments below. So I hope that answers your question. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. If you've got any other queries, I said I'm going to be at the Mega Courts tonight at Windsor Gardens. They're from 6 to 10. And tomorrow I'm going to be at Sprague Recreation Centre and Kelly Road in Modbury North. So you can pop along or you can send me a message and see if I can answer your questions. Okay, blessings.